Welcome friends to another r/malicious compliance video. If you want to do one good deed today, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. That said, our first story of the day is by X Marshmallow. Extra cheese? You got it. This happened a few weeks ago, but I was scrolling through the sub and thought of it again, so I figured I'd share. Nothing crazy, but still fun for me. I work at a fairly popular buffet-style pizza place where you can request any order with any toppings, and we'll put it on the line. This means I, as the cook, am very used to getting strange, gross, annoying pizza requests. This was different though. We have multiple specialty sauces that we can use for the pizzas, including an Alfredo one. Now for those of you who don't know, cheese sauce plus normal cheese plus oven equals soup. I was always told to be very careful with how much cheese I add to an Alfredo pizza because even a little too much can make it basically inedible. This particular day, I had a customer come in requesting Alfredo pizza with extra cheese. No problem, I add more than normal but still not enough to make it soupy and throw it in the oven. It goes up on the line and without even taking a slice, the customer tells me there isn't enough cheese. I try explaining that adding any more would make it so soggy you can't even lift a slice, but they were having none of it and very angrily demanded I make them a new one. And do it right this time, I don't have all day. It's pizza, bro. Chill. We were fairly slow at this point, and I had done all the go-to orders I needed to complete, so cue malicious compliance. I told our server that there would be a special pizza coming out, and I wanted to deliver it myself. She's confused, but basically just says, do what you want. I go to my station, put on the sauce, and absolutely destroy the thing with cheese. It looked like a snowy mountain peak. Beautiful, terrifying, and probably very detrimental to our food sales cost. Oh well. The pizza comes out and it's more liquid than solid, but I managed to cut it and plate it with minimal losses. I bring the entire tray to his table and set it down, a huge smile on my face. Mr. Huffy still looks angry and exclaims the usual, "Finally!" and I walk behind the counter to watch. It was even better than I'd hoped. As soon as he picked up the slice, one-handed a rookie mistake, an avalanche of hot cheese sauce spilled down the front of his shirt, making it look like multiple angry babies attacked him with vomit. He starts yelling and manages to smack his hand down on the tray, flipping it and further covering himself in chunky hot nastiness. My server and I are laughing so hard we need to go into the walk-in so the other customers won't hear us. He never came in again. And yes, I cleaned the table afterwards. Our janitor was a sweet old man, and it wouldn't have been fair to leave it for him. If there was an unruly customer demanding something that you know would be a bad result, and you knew you would get a slap on the wrist reprimanding for doing so, would you still go ahead and make that awful pizza for them and drive them out of the place? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Demon Quiche, Chili Revenge. In my last relationship, I lived with my husband Danny in a duplex owned by his mother, Donna. We lived on one side, and his mother and brother lived on the other side. Donna was a very abusive person and took great joy in belittling me and tormenting me every chance she got. She took extra pride in herself if she succeeded in making me cry. My ex-husband is a professional cook and would often prepare enough food for his mother in addition to ourselves. On occasions where I would do the cooking, she also expected to be served dinner. One thing I made often was chili. Both my ex and his mother loved my chili, but both liked their chili on the spicy side. I never made my chili spicy as I have a sensitive stomach. My ex would just add hot sauce to a serving and that was that. But Donna would complain endlessly about the chili not being spicy, even going so far as to demand that I make the next batch of chili spicy for her. I told her I wasn't going to do that because I wouldn't be able to eat it. She essentially told me that what I wanted didn't matter, since she had been gracious enough to allow me to live in her home. I told her if she wanted it spicy, she could add hot sauce to it like my ex did, or she could make her own darn chili. So the next time my ex told her I was making chili, she came over while I was making it and watched me like a hawk, demanding I add this, that, and another thing. I told her I would be making my chili the way I wanted to, and she could go home and wait for it to be done, or find something else to eat. She left and I continued tending to my chili. Now, my ex is somewhat of a hot sauce connoisseur, and he's never met a hot sauce that was too spicy for him. So the previous Christmas, I bought him a bottle of Carolina Reaper puree. When the chili was ready, he asked me to make a Tupperware container of chili for his mother while he used the bathroom, and he'd take it to her when he was done. So like the good little wifey I was, I put the chili into the container with a heaping tablespoon of Carolina Reaper, mixed it up really well, added some shredded cheese on top and closed it up, ready to be delivered next door. X finished in the bathroom, delivered the chili, and we sat down to our meal. We had just finished approximately 30 minutes later when his phone rang. My ex liked to have his conversations on speaker, and I was glad of it this time. "Danny, something's wrong." Danny says, "What's wrong, Mom?" She says, "This chili, oh, it's burning me up. What did your wife do to this chili?" X looks at me confused. I just shrug. He says, "She didn't do anything to it, it's just normal chili. What did you add to it, Mom?" She says, "I added a little sriracha, but that shouldn't be hot like this." He says, "Well, maybe you added too much." She says, "That hateful witch did something to my chili, Danny. I'm going to kill her." He says, "Calm down, Ma, you're overreacting." She says, "I want her out of my house." He says, "You can't kick her out over chili, Ma." She says, "Watch me." She hung up. My ex looked at me and asked, "Did you really do something to her chili?" I smiled sweetly and said, "Which one is it spicy? It's freaking spicy." There were no real repercussions from this other than being cursed out by her. Also, she was perfectly fine and never asked for my chili again, so bonus. I would say that's a small price to pay. The pleasure of never having to cook for her again, or at least the chili, never having to ration or prepare anything for her. I'm sure there was a great deal of peace of mind involved with that. This next story is by Blaze5G. Only do as instructed? No problem, boss. I started my first help desk IT job being the only other IT staff apart from the network director, my boss. The first day on the job, boss was on vacation for a week on a cruise. I was left alone to take care of IT issues for a company with roughly 400 employees with 5 different locations in different states. Boss had told me to contact him on Skype if I had any issues. The first day, an accountant lost Wi-Fi connection, so I did the Windows troubleshoot problems, and it fixed her issue in less than a minute. A couple hours passed and boss checked in and asked me how things were going. I responded, "Great. Accountant had a Wi-Fi issue, but I fixed it." Boss asked how I fixed it and I told him. He got upset because I should have asked him how to fix it or what I was going to do before attempting the fix. Bear in mind, he was taking approximately an hour between responses when I had asked him questions earlier in the day. Guess I should have had the accountant twiddle her fingers for an hour until he responded. Malicious compliance. Boss came back from vacation and had implemented a rule where I email a timesheet to him what I did every 15 minutes while at work. We were having a slow day, and obviously I haven't learned my lesson from the first incident. There was a stack of old desktops and monitors thrown down in a corner near my cubicle. I thought to myself, let me take the initiative and get these stacked up neatly and notate their serial numbers for our inventory to try and impress boss. At the end of the day, I put that in my timesheet and emailed boss. On my way home, boss calls me and says, "OP, what is this I see in your timesheet about sorting desktops and monitors?" Told him it was a slow day, so I did it while I had free time. Needless to say, he got extremely upset. Got reamed about how he told me already not to do anything unless he asked. Tried to make my case, but he wasn't having it. Boss told me I should only do what he tells me to do and nothing else. The next day, still fuming about how unreasonable boss was, I clocked in and told him I had arrived. He said I should research Microsoft Teams. It was just released, and he wanted to roll it out to the entire company instead of them using Skype. Aye aye, Captain. To Google I went and researched all there is to know about Microsoft Teams. When Teams was just released, it didn't have many features, so I had a full grasp of how it works in an hour and a half. For the rest of the day, I didn't hear a peep out of him. Well, that must mean he wants me to research Teams all day. Of course I didn't. I was on Reddit for the next 6.5 hours. At the end of the day, I emailed my timesheet. 8:45 to 5:45, researched Microsoft Teams. Ring ring. Who would be calling me right after work? Oh look, it's boss. Hey boss, what's going on? Silence. Then boss says, "You mean to tell me you spent all day researching Teams?" I say, "Oh yes, I did. As per our conversation yesterday, you told me only do what you instruct me to do." That's what I did, boss. Boss says, "I didn't mean it literally. If you had nothing else to do, you should have asked." I say, "But boss, I did have something to do. I had to research Teams like you instructed, and boy did I research it." He says, "You better make sure you know everything there is to know about teams." I say, "I do, boss. See you tomorrow." He must have been fuming because he has a short temper. I slept good that night, and that was one of the few nights I slept well during that 7-month period. The only other nights I slept well were my other malicious compliances. Quite a bit. I think I stayed so long because I was at the point of just not caring if I got fired, so I didn't get upset anymore. Just collected my paycheck and put in zero effort. As long as it doesn't affect you mentally, stress-wise, anything like that, working a job that's either bad in itself or has a bad boss or manager, and just surviving through it, going through the motions, collecting the paycheck, it can work. But definitely, like I said, not if it's detrimental to your health. If it didn't affect OP that bad, more power to them for collecting a paycheck and just not giving a care. This next story is by Ben M. 1999. Buy out our company and then fire everyone before you change the system? Works for me. I had worked at a small and rural internet company for nearly 6 years. It was family owned and they paid us all really well for the work that we did. Barely anyone ever left the company. In my position, I was head of sales and I controlled all the software that was associated to clients. This had everything in it, including billing addresses, service addresses, and leads for new clients. It was an outdated program for sure, but it got the job done and it worked for us. Fast forward time and we're still doing our regular jobs when there's an unscheduled meeting thrown at us. We walked in and there were several new faces sitting on the other end of the table. They announced that they had sold the company to XYZ. XYZ seemed like an okay place to continue working because they too were local and the team seemed nice. I was told everything is business as usual and to not do anything different. The transition took place and every so often someone from the new company would come to me and ask how we would do things and get a feel for it. I could tell they were trying to weed us out, so I went balls to the wall with renewals on old accounts. They announced to me that I needed to go into the HR department around closing time. Having anticipated this, I saved all of my commission files and emailed them to myself. I went to the office and they laid me off on the spot because they do not pay commission to their staff. I said okay, and that I plan on them still paying me commission for the time I was there, as they had not discussed anything pay related with me yet. She again said, "We do not pay commission." I emailed my commission statement to the manager I was working with and was basically told the same thing. Fast forward to the next week when they realized they no longer had the credentials to get into our system and they called to ask for the information. I let them know that I would be happy to do that when I come up there to get my check for commission. I didn't hear anything the next day, and then I get a call that my commission check is in the office. I went up there, grabbed the biggest commission check I had ever made, and gave them the credentials. Never tell someone business as usual when you do not intend on things being business as usual. OP said luckily it did clear, but there's a little bit of a risk just taking a check like that. They could have turned around and immediately called up the bank to cancel that check. Thankfully, everything did turn out okay here. And I think although the company probably would have had some kind of legal case, the reason they went along with it is OP did have a legal case themselves too. So a great compliance and a great payday. And our final story of the day is by Stitchapus, Scorching Pepper Jelly. I went through a canning phase, jellies and jam, tomatoes and salsa. If I could water bath can it, I did. We had over 100 jars by the end of things, and to use up the rest of the peppers from making salsa, I made pepper jelly. Everyone loved it. My ex asked me to make him a batch of pepper jelly extra hot the next time I made it, since my last batch was great, but it could be better hotter. Cue malicious compliance. A few weeks later, my ex was traveling for work and I still had peppers in the refrigerator, so pepper jelly was a great way to use them up. I used about a dozen serranos and habaneros each. The guy at the Mexican market was more than happy to help me pick the hottest peppers he had, so I tossed those in it besides what I normally would add. Bell peppers for sweetness, jalapenos, etc. And since I can't taste the stuff, ulcers, so no spicy stuff for this gal, I didn't know how hot it was. I could tell it was hot since my head was clearing up just from cooking it. Always a good sign. My ex gets home a few days later after I made the pepper jelly, and after a few minutes, he's rushing for milk, ice cream, anything to cool off his mouth. He said that the heat was slow to build, and it just kept building and wouldn't stop, and once it did, it was freaking hot. I smiled and laughed as his mouth was on fire, his eyes watered, his nose dripped, he broke out into a sweat. All I could say was, "Hot enough now?" He glared at me. Guess it was hot enough. So today I learned about what pepper jelly is. It's literally like a jelly, just made of peppers, spicy. All I know is, as a wimp that hates spicy stuff, I'm not looking to get any pepper jelly anytime soon. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel, and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.